Good morning, Boker Tov. Thank you for being patient with us today. For those of you who missed the 3-day seminar, all 3 classes are online on video on YouTube. So you're welcome to go online and just put in 3-day seminar and with our name and you'll find it.
I thought so.
Oh, absolutely.
3-day seminar and what?
Last week on
I know,
Stories of the
what to put
Destruction.
in?
Rabbi Yonatan Halevy on YouTube, and then you'll find the 3-day seminar as one of the recent uploads. We're talking about making peace.
Yes.
Relationships at home. When 2 people come to a third party for help, there has to be one precondition in order to get help. And that is?
You can accept the help that you get.
That's good. Though I'll tell you that not always should you accept the help you get.
Both
Does
parties
not-
have to be willing.
Very good. Yes. Both parties must be willing. אמנם הצלחת החכם הבא לעשות שלום, the only way the third party, the rabbi in this case, the only chance he has to make hope, היא תלויה במידה רבה ברצונם הפנימי לעשות שלום. It's very dependent on their inner desire to make peace. If 2 people don't want to make peace, no matter how much you talk about making peace, it won't happen. I was invited a few years back to a little inquisition of rabbis to make peace. I don't use the word inquisition lightly. And towards the end of the meeting, my wife and I just excused ourselves from the meeting and said, I'm sorry, but it's not going to work. Nobody in this room is interested in peace, so what are we all doing talking about it? Erev Tisha B'Av. Erev Tisha B'Av, the eve of Tisha B'Av. And all these rabbis, nobody was interested. There were a few good people in that room, a few good people with good ideas, and everybody else. Somebody in this room, not my wife, her husband was there and had the wisest, sagest advice that nobody wanted to listen to. אמנם, אפילו אם אינם רוצים בשלום, but even if the couple doesn't want peace, או רק אחד מהם הוא שלא רוצה, maybe there's only one side that doesn't want. See, what happens oftentimes in a relationship is that one side has decided I'm done, and the other side still wants to work it out. על החכם לאחוז במידתו של אהרון ולרדוף שלום ולגלות תושייה, להסביר להם שזהו לטובתם לחיות בשלום ביחד. He said the Chacham sometimes has to go out of his way to convince the other side that they also want peace. What is your life going to look like afterwards? You think it's going to be all green on the other side of the fence? The grass isn't always green. What I say, sometimes the grass on the other side of the fence is just concrete painted green. You know, you think it looks good. From here it looks good, but you get there and you realize it's not anything you signed up for.
That's life.
That's right, exactly.
But there's also a condition to that. You don't always make peace between a couple. But rather, אם החכם מבין שכך הוא לטובתם שיסתלקו מגורמי המחלוקת ולחיות בשלום. It has to be the third party's opinion that it's worth making peace in this relationship. Sometimes there are relationships which are not making, it's not worth making peace inside of them. There's the husband who's abusive. You talk and talk and talk, and at a certain point, the third party feels it's not safe anymore. It's not proper
Depends
anymore.
on which abuse you're talking about. Because there are several abuses. It's not just a clap here and there. It could be verbal, it could be mental. So we have to work out which abuse you're referring to.
So I believe that, my personal opinion, and I don't mean this in a way that you will take incorrectly, it could be that the effects of verbal and emotional abuse are more damaging to a human being than physical abuse.
Thank
I'm
you.
not, God forbid, excusing physical
No,
abuse.
no.
But there are people who are abused and don't even realize it.
That's
And
right.
you should know abuse is not only a man's thing. I've seen my fair share of abusive wives. My fair share, and they keep coming.
By wives, you mean.
What? By wives, meaning the wives are abusive.
No, not his wives.
Yeah.
With a plural S, you saw. There are times where it's really not in their best interest to stay together. There are times where there's more destruction. You know, there are times people say, we want to stay married for the kids. Maybe in a certain way, for that family that works, but for other families, the kids are raising up in a destroyed place and they're...
Correct.
It's not, what are you... They're getting the wrong message.
Correct.
And there are times where this is the rabbi's job, is sometimes to tell them, I'm sorry, but this is not something that I believe should be worked out.
I think it's also important to mention, not necessarily people should stay in abusive relationships, but very often personalities attract the same thing, and people get divorced from an abusive relationship, and then 5 years later they find a spouse with a different name, but the exact same profile.
Exactly.
And sometimes it's better to look at this relationship and say it might be very dysfunctional, but there are core things in both of these people that, if they were to work them out together, they might be a beautiful couple.
Exactly.
So what is at our root? We have to figure out what is the root of disharmony. Now, our parents made a list of just a few things that, in his years of experience, are very often the root of problems inside of a relationship. And the first one is very simple. Levatel tzipiyot lo nechamot. To get rid of false expectations. Very often there are people who think that they're in such a terrible relationship because they have false expectations of what it is, what a relationship is supposed to be, what a marriage is. There was once a young lady who came to Lubavitcher Rebbe, and she mentioned to him that she wasn't able to get married. Every person she went out with, this one didn't work, and that one didn't work, and that one didn't work. And she wasn't, there was no guy on earth that was good for her. And the Lubavitcher Rebbe told her she should stop reading romance novels. He said, because in real life, romance novels don't take place. He said, you have these expectations in your head. If some guy, a knight in shining armor, is going to run to you, sweep you off your feet, save you from all your life's woe. So you're looking for something that, sure, may eventually the person that you marry may be that person, but it doesn't work that way in life. You sometimes have to, you're working with the person. This person's becoming your partner, not your Mashiach. You know, the person. But there are times people have false expectations, and you know where false expectations come from the most?
Movies.
The media.
Movies, the media.
Media.
And I think there's something worse than that.
Comparing.
Books.
Comparing to other people's
Very good.
relationships.
Comparing. Very often people will come to me and they'll say, oh, you know, your wife, she's so good at, and I will just say, Baruch Hashem. Why can't you give her a compliment? It's none of your business what my wife is good at. Why? Because your wife is probably good at something else, and you don't appreciate it, so you look at my wife and think there's something in there that you should appreciate. And if I talk to you about what my wife is good at, you're going to walk away with this image. Oh. So they say about these 4 guys, they all got married, young couples, the husbands are sitting together one night having a conversation. Well, you know, my wife, every time, a dish doesn't even touch the sink and she's already washing it. My wife, she doesn't take care of anything at home. But she's a multi-million career lady. She comes home with a salary every month. You can live off it for 3 years. The salary maker. And they're talking about their wife. And the 5th friend who's sitting there, he's still, you know, young, waiting to get married. He's single and dating. He's like, wow, so I need a wife who does the dishes, who makes a multi-million-dollar salary, who takes care of the kids, and who stays home all the time. And that's what I need. And his head, he made a false image based on, you know, the wife who makes a multi-million-dollar salary doesn't ever see her children. And the one that is staying home all day doesn't bring home $1. And the one who's cleaning the dishes, she doesn't do the laundry. And the one who's smiling all the time to him, well, she's also mean to his parents. Whatever it is that happens over there. And he thinks that there's this perfect package, and it's a mistake. And therefore, the proper advice is don't talk to other people about your spouse. It's not.
Also, we look often on the outside of people. We see, oh, they are such a happy couple and they look so great together. But we don't know what happens behind.
Thank you.
There was once a boy in our yeshiva who got married. And this boy, I cannot tell you, if you wanted to do a case study in bad character traits, this would be your ideal candidate. Like this would be he would take the cake. There's no bad character trait he didn't once embody in a personify. And he got married one day. And I reached out to one of my friends and I said, yeah, I'm really excited for him. And then I said, but who is he marrying? And he said, that's exactly it. You don't know what he's getting himself into, right? You don't know who he's marrying. Maybe he finds the other side of his coin, or the other person who also has such bad character traits. Sometimes, you have to know, not everything is what it looks like on the outside. Sometimes on the inside, there's something else. I was once in yeshiva, and I'll tell you, when I went to yeshiva in high school, not in Israel, but my parents ran a very different ship in Israel than what I was used to in America. The yeshiva in Baltimore was founded in 1933. 1933 means it's one of the oldest Jewish institutions in this country that is still open. And probably since 1933 until 2007 or 8 when I got there, no, 2003 when I got there was not one rule changed since 1933. The yeshiva did not update anything. It didn't update its protocol. It didn't update its educational system. Everything was the same since 1933. It was an all-boys prep school for 1,000 people. And 1,000 boys in the yeshiva. 250 in high school, about 500 post-high school and college and yeshiva, and 250 who were full-time and married, learning young rabbis that were in training. It's about 1,000 people. That's not including the staff and the rabbis who lived on campus.
Wow.
It was about an 85-acre campus, so everyone lived on the campus. The rabbis, their wives, the children, everything. It was a very special place to be. Every boy in our shul was there now. But, and this is with a big B, looking back as an educator, there was just some things that they worked in 1935. That was like cutting edge education. But 2016 has its own set of playing rules. You're dealing with different kids, you're dealing with different lives, with different kinds of parents, with different... But there were certain things that were very... I thought what was good about being an old school yeshiva. The rabbi who ran the yeshiva was an absolute dictator. A good dictator, though. Dictators are not always bad. What do I mean by a good dictator? You would break one rule. It didn't make a difference if it was being caught off hours, off campus, somewhere you shouldn't be, or having a radio, which you weren't allowed to have on campus. It doesn't make a difference what it was. If you were up too late past your bedtime, no matter what. One offense, we warned you, next time you're home. 8 o'clock in the morning, you can't be here anymore. Your parents have to buy you a plane ticket, you're out. There's no second chances. There was a boy in my class who was thrown out of yeshiva. His father was a very wealthy man. And he came back to the rabbi and said, I'll pay for a new wing of the yeshiva. Just take my son back. And he said, you could pay for the new wing of the yeshiva, but your son is not coming back. And his son didn't come back. And when I was visiting in Baltimore recently, there was a new wing to the yeshiva. On that man's name. Doesn't make a difference who you are. The rules are the rules. He threw his own son out of yeshiva. His son broke the rules. And said, you can't throw me out. I live on campus. And find somewhere else to live. He said, I hold you to the same standard I hold all my other students to. His grandson was in my class, and he threw his grandson out of yeshiva too. So don't come here with a sense of entitlement that you're better than anybody else. And I'll tell you what that did for us. What that did for us was when he threw one of us out, which I obviously was not one of those who were thrown out, you felt that he was being fair. He didn't have a double standard. If you were a richer kid or from his family, it didn't make a difference. He had the same rules for everybody. I have yet to meet any institution, forget Jewish, that still operates by the same playing cards. It could be the biggest donor's son, and he's gone. I've never seen such a thing. Not since the yeshiva. I've never seen such a thing. And what it did to the yeshiva, you thought, maybe, this, when he came in, they thought it was crazy. What are you, like an iron fist? But it made a name of integrity for this yeshiva that other yeshivot don't have. And it turns out that the parents ended up respecting. My mother, you know my mother, she once called because she was worried about the class that I was put in. I was put into that Talmud class. Between you and I didn't belong in that Talmud class. But Rabbi Taylor, who was my rabbi, he felt very much that at that point in time, that's where I belonged. I talked to him until my face was blue, and it didn't make a difference. So, you call in the cavalry. I called out to my mother. My mother calls up Rabbi Taylor, and Rabbi Taylor listens to everything she has to say. You know, I'm an educator, my son belongs to this class, da-da-da. And Rabbi Taylor waited for her to finish, and he said, Mrs. Halevy, do you want to take my job? Because I'm more than happy to retire. You're more than welcome to become the principal. I said, no, I didn't mean I'm not trying to take your job. I said, good. If you're not trying to take my job, then just hang up the phone and don't tell me how to run my school.
Wow.
He was very
Meaning,
consistent.
if you trust me with your children's education, trust me. If you want to send your children here and tell me how to educate them, send them to another school. There are many schools like that, but not this one. So Rabbi Taylor, though, was very old school. And he said the kind of things that I don't believe educators would say, but he was a personality, and people liked this personality, and I don't know many people that walked away angry at this man. He was a very warm, loving person who also ran a very tight ship.
Actually, you get respect towards people like that.
Absolutely.
Because it made no difference whether it was his son or grandson.
It also made no difference, by the way, if there was a senior rabbi on the staff. You know, Rabbi Taylor had a problem. The problem is that most boys don't wake up in the morning on time. And he demanded that at 7:30, when prayers start, everybody must be in the room. All 250 people. 7:33, maybe you get away with being 3 minutes late. And how do you get everyone to be there at 7:30 in the morning? Because people come and they see the rabbi had to take his kids to school, and so he was running a few minutes late. He said, in my school, I don't make it into what school you send your kids to, but the rabbis are on staff, they have to be here at 7:30 also. If they're not here at 7:30, he fined them from their salary. He took off $100, took off $150. So just make it. You want to come 10? You have to take your kids to the doctor's appointment? Good for you, but if you want your 20 students to come to class, you also have to be there on time. And that was all the rabbis in yeshiva also reached a certain level of, it was like being in an army. So you have to imagine it wasn't a school, it was more like a boot camp army, but it was a special experience in our lives. I wouldn't do it again, but I did it once, and Baruch Hashem, I served my time.
They know where they're standing.
They know where they're standing with him. So
It was fair, and I think fairness people can accept.
and we did.
Even if it's
That, and that's what it was. He was not mean. He was fair. Very, like, sometimes too fair. And it was like a little bit, can you cut a corner? No, I do not cut corners. I don't. He never, and in his own life, he didn't cut corners either. He demanded the same thing from himself.
And the new rabbi that's taken over from him now, it runs
He
Kehillat.
was a student of his, so I'm assuming he runs it. And I don't know that anybody could
But you
ever
met
be
him.
like him, but he's. I didn't ever study by him, so I can't tell you the answer to that.
No, I
question.
said, did you meet him?
I met sure I met him. He was a rabbi in yeshiva when I was there. And Doron, who's there now, says good things that he runs yeshiva also. A little bit more updated. He allowed cell phones into yeshiva. Some needed changes that needed to be updated that were not updated. Why am I telling you about Rabbi Tana? Old school education methods I don't agree with. We had a small group of people, 10 people in the room, that were hand selected to study for a year with Rabbi Tana. It's 12th grade, your last year in yeshiva. And I was in this little group of students. It's not the 50-person class, it's a small class. And we were studying Talmud together, and we reached a certain place in the Talmud. There was one boy who had come from New York in 12th grade with a big attitude. And nothing to do with him being from New York, of course, just an attitude. And he would always say the most haughty, egotistical things in class, would ask these kind of questions from this place of entitlement. It was a very interesting personality to watch. We had never encountered such a personality. About 8 months into the school year, Rabbi Taylor stopped the class and he said, so-and-so, looking at him, said, you will have a terrible marriage. Now, this is 12th grade. I said, excuse me? He says, yeah. He says, some girl's gonna marry you thinking you are the man of her dreams. You are so smart, you can do everything, you can say everything, you know something. There's always something you can add to every story. He said, she's gonna marry you. And he said, she's gonna realize you're like, he said, you're full of nothing. He said, where's your humility? He said, where are your good character traits? Where's your refinement? So what are you doing here? He said, you want someone to marry you and discover the next morning she married wind? And I have to tell you, I would never say in public, especially. It's like beyond my comprehension. But this boy became a very, very close student of Rabbi Taylor's, and that was the catalyst. That was the event that made it happen. And I have to say that I don't know any more people that call people out like that, because you live in a world where you can't always say the things that need to be said. False expectations are a really problematic thing, and there are people who, you see this all the time. In English, there's a word called falling in love. In Hebrew, there's no such word. In Hebrew, there's actually no such really word for love. We kind of borrow the word ahava to refer to love. But to fall in love means that you fell, literally. You were blinded by something. You were awestruck with this person, with her hair, with his looks, whatever it was, with their talents, with their finances, whatever it was, and then you fell in love. You fell. Rav Shaar, Alav Shalom, he used to say that a person can't go to sleep. They must fall asleep. What does it mean? You have to use up your last ounce of energy in your day, your last ounce of potential before you fall asleep. And they would often find Rav Shaar in the morning when the students would come wake him up, they would find him on his face, right in front of the bed. He had not had an extra drop of energy to get into bed, and just fell on the floor in front of his bed. And that's where he slept the whole night. A very extreme way of going to sleep. Falling asleep. But when you fall for something, it means you're not using your judgment. You're not using the intellect, because heart and intellect are two different things. And our rabbis always tell us that you must have your mind in control. It doesn't mean to be cold, it doesn't mean to be callous, but you have to make sure, is this really good for me? Is this the kind of person I can spend the rest of my life with? Yesh matzavim, there are situations שציפיות מופרזות, that exaggerated expectations, ורצונות לא מאוזנות, and unbalanced desires, הן הגורמות למחלוקת בין איש לאשתו. They are the cause of struggle between a husband and wife. כגון, for example, שהאיש סבור שהאישה צריכה לשמוע בקול בעלה. There are some husbands that think that a woman should always listen to her husband, that he should always make the decisions in the house. That's what a man does. He was raised in that kind of home, whatever he got it from, whichever society he picked it up in. He thinks that when he gets married, he has the final say in everything that happens. V'lasot kol tzivuyav. She has to listen to all of his commandments. Her parents is mocking the person while he's writing about him. This is a person who, and you've seen many such people in your lives. Don't pretend you haven't. That what they say, that must be it. Aval ishto, but his wife, all of a sudden he can't understand. Lo mitneged kach. She doesn't listen to him. Ela osa ma she machlita. She does whatever she decides to do. She does. Benigud adat b'na'ot no. She goes against his wishes. This man is baffled. He's in this relationship. He's a terrible wife. Look what they sold me in the market. This lady who doesn't listen to anything that I say. Al-Chacham, now it's the rabbi's responsibility. You have to understand, how many years has the person been alive? 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, however many years it is. Now the rabbi has to step in and give him a wake-up call. He has to now explain. Using terms that the husband can comprehend. You know, sometimes a person comes from a certain worldview. You can't just shatter his image. You have to work your way into his mind in a way that he can process what it is that you're sharing with him. Le'emor, you have to tell him that a woman is also created in God's image. She has her own independence, her own intellect, and her own desires and wills and needs in this world that are hers. And now if you want your wife to listen to what you have to say, talui bo uva. It's both dependent on you and her, not just on her. talui bo. בהתנהגות הבעל במעשיו בצורה דיבורו עמה, שתסכים ברצונה לדבר לדבר בקשתו. He has to speak in a way, he has to talk in a way, he has to treat her in a way that she'll want to do the kind of things that he wants to do. You don't just wake up in the morning and you are now this leader of a home who decides everything in your house. Where do you come from? You have to develop some kind of relationship with the person you're living with so that there is a desire to, I want to make you happy. That's in every relationship. This desire, when you make somebody happy, it's not because you're forced to do things for them. It's because you've reached a place where you respect somebody, you want them to be happy also, and therefore you could call it whatever you want. You could call it, now I'm listening to you, but at the end of the day, it comes from a place of I respect you, I want you, I'm desiring to be who you would also like to see me be. But that's dependent on you, says our parents, not on her. You don't understand that she's her own person, that she has her own visions and her own dreams and her own plans. You have to remember also that in a world where people don't date each other so much, you don't really know so much what the other person wants to do with their life until you're married to them. I'm not talking about the shidduch world today. That's not such a real example. I don't know how many times my grandparents ever dated each other. I don't know if they dated each other. I don't know that my grandfather ever spoke to my grandmother before he got married to her. My grandfather got married when he was 15. My grandmother was 13.
That's correct.
In Yemen, the Muslims would kidnap the Jewish girls who were single. But according to Yemenite law, you cannot kidnap Jewish girls if they're engaged to be married. So they would engage the girls very young, and then they would get married very young, and they didn't actually, not in all these situations, did they actually live together as a husband and wife. Very often they just moved into their parents' houses together until they were old enough to realize they were married. But much of this was done because the world around them was a crazy world. So my grandfather,
done in the Middle Ages in Poland?
Yes,
absolutely.
it
You
was.
should know.
It was done
There's an
everywhere.
old Ashkenazi custom. The old Ashkenazi custom is that boys under the age of, until they get married, they don't wear a talit. I don't know if you know this. That's the old Ashkenazi custom. Is that bar mitzvah boys do not wear a talit. Sfaradim, yes. German Jews, yes. All the other European Jews do not wear talitot at their bar mitzvah. If you ever noticed a reform or conservative bar mitzvah, the bar mitzvah boy does wear a talit. The reason is the Reform movement was founded in Germany, and therefore they're following German customs, not European customs. That's why it happens the way it does. But if you go to Bar Park and a boy has his bar mitzvah, he doesn't wear a talit. Okay, 1 minute. Oh. He's being changed, so he's telling me 1 minute he's going to be back.
Yes.
You're changing me.
The reason why this happened was because people had their bar mitzvah at 13 years old. In Ashkenazi tradition, who buys the husband a talit?
The wife.
The wife.
Yes.
His bride buys him a talit. That's the wedding gift from the bride's side. And therefore, if you're going to get married 6 months, a year later, what do you need to buy a talit at your bar mitzvah for? Just wait 6 months, wait a year, you're going to get married, she'll buy you a talit. And that's where the Ashkenazi custom of, there is a source of why they don't do it, but on a practical level, this was just, people waited a year and then they started wearing a talit. Today, people don't get married at least in their 20s and their 30s. So you're going to have a person who for 20 years never wears a talit.
No.
He's been bar mitzvah, he's not to give, that's why this custom already also has to change. But I can't come to the Ashkenazi and change all the customs in the world. There are many Ashkenazi rabbis, none less than the Chavetz Chaim, who felt that this was a mistaken custom and it should be changed. But okay, I'm just.
But there are sects that still hold it. They don't buy the
Most.
Really, most
Ashkenazi Jews.
But
Really?
just one They way just to wear have it the during talit the there. bar mitzvah, but not after.
Oh, I
Oh, interesting. Oh, that could be.
During this, I mean, when they go to the Torah, they wear a talit.
But, right, okay, so in Ashkenazi synagogues, whenever a person is, not in Hasidic synagogues, in Ashkenazi synagogues, whenever someone is leading services or reading from the Torah or getting aliyah from the Torah, he puts on a talit. So some buy a talit for the bar mitzvah boy so that he can have one to use when he needs to
Or
use.
somebody lends them.
Or somebody lends him.
Yes.
Yeah.
It's incomprehensible to me that a person doesn't wear a talit when they become bar mitzvah. I know it's an old custom, if the Sfaradim wear talitot, and the Yemenites wear talitot, and the German Jews, were the original Ashkenazi Jews, they wear talitot. I don't know, the math adds up that the people should wear talitot. Then there's another problem. I have a brother-in-law who got divorced and is the happiest man in the world. That's why I talk about him, because he's happy in his situation. My brother-in-law is the most happy-go-lucky guy you will ever meet in your life. Nothing phases him. Nothing bothers him. Nothing pressures him. Even when he needs to be pressured, not pressured.
Must be nice.
It's very nice. You met him. Shirley.
Shirley, yes, Shirley.
I could share a story about Shirley.
Of course, it's a good one.
A good one. My brother-in-law always worked. Always had a job. Always made a living. Always paid his rent. Always paid his bills. Always took care of his kids and his wife and his family. He had no aspirations to become wealthy. He did not care to have a career. He did not care to come back with millions of dollars. So long as he could work, he wants to work and make do for his family. He wanted to live in a home that he could afford. He wanted to drive a car that he could afford. He wanted to live within his means. His wife, who, mind you, wasn't any more educated than him or any more working with a better salary than him, couldn't understand why he didn't want to be rich and famous and drive a fancy car and live in a big house, and their whole life his providing for his family was never enough. Never enough, because she wanted to have more than her friends. She wanted to go on a vacation more than the people at the synagogue. She wanted to drive a car better than the ones at the people's school that her kids went to. And she's not crazy. There are a lot of people in the world like that. There are a lot of people in the world that are always looking around. What is it, keeping up with the Cohens? With the Joneses? Kind of always look around and say, I want to one-up them. This became such a problem in the Orthodox community that dozens and dozens of Hasidic rabbis signed, and not just Hasidic rabbis, signed on a booklet of what are called takanot. Takanot are rules, wedding rules. You had a situation where one family would make a wedding for their children. And they would hire this beautiful band who flew in from Israel. They would bring them in, right? And they would have on the table, every centerpiece was $350. And the benchers were gold stamped on there, whatever it was that happened. There was a 6-course meal, whatever was going on over here. Oh,
You want to sit with me?
Sweet.
No, okay.
And then what happened to the next couple who wanted to get married? So their parents had to get a full-piece orchestra. Yeah, I don't know, a philharmonic orchestra in the room. They had to hire, they had to get centerpieces that were worth $1,000 a table. They had to bring in a caterer from Italy. I don't know, whatever they had to do. And it became this point where people over and over and over again were just trying to outdo each other. People were getting into debt, into more debt, and it was not conducive for the growth of a spiritual community. And so there were certain rabbis, big rabbis, who signed a number of decrees, and every community varies slightly, where they say if the wedding will be more than this amount, if there will be more than 5 pieces of a band at a wedding, if the centerpiece will be worth more than X, if there will be more than 3 courses at a wedding, if there'll be more than, and they made a list, whatever list it is that they came up with, we won't be there. The rabbi will not come to do the wedding. Find yourself your own rabbi. And what this did was it made certain communities really take this idea a little more seriously. There are halls today in New York that they have special nights of the week which are made for what they call tachanot wedding, weddings that follow the rules. And those weddings have a price cap on them that you cannot top. So there are some wedding halls, a little more run down, that you could get a whole wedding with the music, with the food, with photographer, with the table and centerpieces. They might be reusable centerpieces. They might be a tablecloth that someone else had at their wedding and was dry cleaned. There might be a 2-piece band instead of a 5-piece band. And that wedding will cost you between $10,000 to $12,000. There's another wedding hall where you could pay between $15,000 and $18,000 and it'll have 500 guests, which is a small wedding in the Orthodox community. But 500 guests, you'll have a 4-course meal, you'll have a 2-piece band, but it's capped at a certain price. You cannot pass this price. Rabbi Katzin, who's one of my rabbis, recently flew to Greece to do a wedding, a destination wedding. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about. They fly like 80 people out to a certain island in the middle of nowhere, they do a wedding. Now there are Orthodox people who started doing these things also. And when I asked them why would they fly everyone out to Greece, 80 people, put them up in a hotel, he said they're from a Syrian community in New York, and the Syrian community in New York is very wealthy, but not everyone is as wealthy as the other person in the Syrian community. And in the Syrian community, an inexpensive wedding could be about $250,000. And so any wedding that will be less than $250,000 is cheap for them. And to fly 80 people out to some exotic island somewhere and bring the rabbi and pay for the hotel and bring the caterer who's kosher and fly in the food from New York, whatever, it's cheaper for them than to get married at home in New York. And this is a problem. So I want to read to you her side of the story. There's also a problem, sometimes false expectations. There's a wife who's expecting, or she wants. There are some who actively complain verbally to their friends, to their parents. Why isn't my husband wealthy like that guy? Why is he not as, the word zariz has a Yiddish word called geschikt. In English it means
Efficient.
Yeah, it does mean efficient, but it's probably ambitious.
Ambitious. Why is he not ambitious like my brother, like my brother-in-law? Why is she not sharp and witty like my father? She's in such stupid, nonsensical complaints that she has against her husband. I have a friend, and he got married. This man, if you would embarrass him in front of a room of 10,000 people, he would just smile and get up and walk away, not say anything back, not fight. The most calm, gentle, a mensch, like a real mensch, like you could go get training from him to be a mensch. He married a girl whose father was a combination between an Israeli and a New Yorker. So he had both character traits. They got married. In their first year of marriage, they got in a car accident. Small car. Someone bumped into his car. They pulled over on the side of the street. And so my friend got out of the car and said, "Hi, how are you? Are you okay? Are you feeling all right? Does your neck hurt you? Does your back hurt you?" That's not his fault. The other person hit him. He wants to make sure the other guy is okay. Okay, can I get your driver license, registration? Let's share information, insurance, whatever you share at a car accident. And when he gets back into the car after wrapping everything up, they shook hands, they're going to take care of it, they're going to talk later. His wife was boiling over the top in the car. She was ready to explode. He looks at her and says, what happened? You didn't get in the car. What's wrong with you? What happened? He said, I don't understand. What kind of man are you? He said, what do you mean? He says, you didn't get out there and scream at him and shove his face into the glass of the windshield. He said, are you crazy? I want to make sure the guy was okay. Why are you making sure the guy's okay? He hit you. He said, because he's a human being and I want to make sure he's alright. That's a normal thing to ask somebody. And you took his insurance information? You think he's ever going to call you back? I said, yeah, I think he's a good guy. So what, you didn't take the card from him and say you'll send it back to him in the mail? Whatever she was. He's like, where did you come from? And after a while of going to get some help from the third party, they realized that in her image, this ideal man was her father, who bangs people's heads into windshields and screams at them and pulls things out of their hands. And if he wasn't able to talk like that, it must be that he's not a real man. And it only took her later to realize that, no, she probably got the most real man that she could ever get. She just didn't see it that way. Al HaChacham, it's the rabbi's job, לבאר ולמד ולומר לה מפורשות, את נישאת לבעלך, you are married to this man. You're married to him. He's your husband. Hashem yitbarach ziveg etchem letovatchem. Hashem, in His infinite wisdom, put the two of you together. אסור לך לדמות להשוות את בעלך למישהו אחר. Don't compare your husband to another person. בעלך הוא בעלך כמו שהוא. He's your husband just the way he is, with his flaws and with his good character traits. כפי פיתוחו, כפי שכלו. He has his own strength, he has his own intellect. כפי גופו, נפשו ונשמתו. He has his own body, he has his own soul, he has his own heart. ואסור לך לתבוע, לבקש, לדרוש שיהיה מישהו אחר. The worst thing you can do in a relationship is to demand from your spouse to be somebody else who he's not. That's the worst thing you can do, is tell a person, I'm not happy with who you are. I want you to be someone else. It's a very dangerous thing. There are some people that, because of the society they live in, the relationship they're in, the parents they have, whatever it is that they're in, they grow up their whole life not happy with who they are. They're not happy with who they are. To not be proud of themselves because their parents were never proud of them. Because why couldn't you get better grades? Why couldn't you get a better career? Why couldn't you? Because this is who I am. This is who I am. And we live in a world that's changing a little bit. I don't know that it's changed completely. But a world which is accepting of a lot of things that we didn't used to accept. Some good and some not so good. But this concept of accepting people for who they are has become a flag that we lift today in many, many places. We raise this banner of, I want you to be the best you could be. Even if we don't really mean it, we say it. And just saying it is important. Just believing that is important. Imagine a whole life a person grows up with no self-esteem. The world around them tells them if you don't have a house with 5 bedrooms and you don't drive 2 cars and you don't have a swimming pool in your backyard and you don't, whatever it is that the world demands from you to be. You don't have a job that pays above such a certain salary. You're not really good at being. And I'll tell you, the Jewish community is worse about this than other communities. The Jewish community, and I'm not specifically targeting the Orthodox Jewish community because I don't think it's the Orthodox Jewish community. We have always been people who work hard and value education. And I'm not embarrassed. The Jewish people have always valued education. And when you say, so what is a good job for a Jew? A doctor, a lawyer, accountant. Sometimes we'll let them be rabbis, teachers, something. You want to be a taxi driver? Maybe a Jewish guy who drives a taxi? What Jewish guy drives a taxi? What do you mean? He wants to drive a taxi. What's your problem? He wants to drive a taxi. You want to be what could he be? Plumber. A Jewish plumber? Plumber, that's for someone else to do. You want to be an electrician? What? Be an electrical engineer. Why do you have to be an electrician? And we have in our communities a little bit of a snobby attitude towards people who they have different talents and they work very hard at their fields and their professions, and for some reason it didn't make the cut of what is a Jewish profession. It's absolutely silly because there's no such. In fact, you should know that our rabbis very much warned us against getting involved in I'm sorry to say because it's not what the Jewish people do. They very much warned us against getting involved in what they called empty careers. Careers which a plumber has his own 2 hands. He works, He comes to the house, he fixes something, and he leaves. There are certain careers that you're selling ideas, you're marketing concepts, and it's not a tangible product you can hold, you can sell. It's not something you can put on the shelf at 5 o'clock at night and go home to your family. You're thinking about it your whole life, you're thinking about it your whole day. Our rabbis were wary of such fields because of the lack of peace that it brought into a person's life. They felt, it's better to make less, but to have a job you can turn off and go home. It's better to make less and not to have to work on Shabbat because you make your own hours, you don't work for somebody else. There was a certain style, and I don't know if that style works in today's generation. Perhaps today, I don't know if being a plumber is a lucrative business. I don't know. I'm not sure.
Yes,
Maybe it is. Okay.
And so is an electrician.
Anything is more than a rabbi. It's not but so is an electrician. Okay, Baruch Hashem. But every person has to be who they are. And when you create expectations for people that that's not who they are, you married this person. Why spend your whole life with this person, telling him that they're not good enough? What are you going to get out of it at the end of the day? You're going to knock them down further and further and further, and you're going to end up with nobody.
Scotch tape.
For what? I had a meeting a year and a half ago in New York with a this Jewish guy, saw us on YouTube, learned in our classes, once came to visit here, wanted me to come talk to him about his marriage, about his life, whatever it was. We came, I met him in his office. And in his office, he has a bed. I go, what do you have a bed in your office? They let you take naps at work? So no, I live in my office.
What?
You live in your office, you have children, you have a wife. We ended up talking, he doesn't make enough money. His wife's friends all have vacation homes. His wife's friends all go to the Bahamas every year for family reunions. And so he only makes a few $100,000 a year, and it's not good enough for her. And everything he does, he says, doesn't seem to be, and I'm sure there's a her side of the story too, I'm positive. But when this man feels that his home is no longer safe for him to go back to, and the safest place in his life is in a office building in Manhattan, you have to question whether this relationship is crazy. If you're not safe with your spouse, so who are you safe with? If your spouse will not up your self-esteem, so who do you expect is going to up your self-esteem? If you won't be there for your spouse, who do you want to be there for them? There's a famous rabbi. I'm going to refrain from mentioning his name because people who believe in him probably would have a hard time accepting the story. How parents once saw him on Shabbat. Every Shabbat he would go for a walk with his wife in Jerusalem. Shabbat walk. 2 hours, 3 hours. They would stroll around the streets of Jerusalem talking about who knows what.
No.
And one of the students once approached his rabbi and said, I don't understand. You're supposed to be some great rabbi. What are you spending your whole Shabbat afternoon instead of learning, instead of teaching? You just walk around in circles with your wife. And this rabbi answered, he said, you're not married yet. He said, but when you get married, I want to give you a word of advice. If you don't walk around with your wife, somebody else is going to walk around with your wife. That's a great rabbi. What is he worried about? But the truth is, if a person doesn't get at home what a person should be able to get at home, they will look for it somewhere else. It's not a threat. I'm not, God forbid, threatening anybody. We must create for our spouses the most ideal, desirable situation in the house as we possibly can. That is our job. I can only do my 50%. They also have to do their 50%. But I must do my 50%. I must make this place a place where they come and they're not judged, where they come and they're not overly criticized. Okay. Overly criticized. It can't be that always we're fighting about something. It can't be that always they can't do what they need to do. It can't be that such a thing is always going to be there. We married the person we married. We have to let them be who they are. Just like you would not like. You would be so opposed. With all your energy, you would be opposed. To be compared to another woman. Et gufech, your body, kochech, your energy, nafshech, your heart, your soul, nishmatech. You wouldn't want someone to compare you to somebody else. Why can't you be pretty like someone else? Why can't you work hard like that other guy's wife? You want to hear that? So why do you say that to somebody else? And in our life, this goes two ways. We have to know that this is the old rule of the Torah. When a convert comes to Kehillat and says, teach me the whole Torah on 1 foot. So Shammai throws him at the door. So you crazy, the whole Torah on 1 foot? You have to spend your whole life on one foot to teach you the whole Torah. He comes to Hillel. Hillel tells him, Kol desani alayich, that everything that you hate, lo ta'avid lechavertach, do not do to your friend. What is hated to you, don't do to someone else. If you don't like being treated that way, why do you talk to other people that way? If you don't like being criticized, why do you criticize other people? If you don't like people making sarcastic comments at you, why do you make sarcastic comments at them? If you have a hard time when people don't compliment you, why do you spend your whole life not being able to compliment somebody else? Listen to the problem. There's a problem with people who are not mean. You have to listen. People who are not mean. They're not mean people. They just don't know. I'm going to use a Yiddish word because we use it in Hebrew also. You want to lay on me? We use this word in Hebrew also. The word is lefargen, or in Yiddish, to fargin.
Yep.
There are some people who don't know to fargin. What does it mean? They don't know how to flatter somebody else. Someone makes you food, and you say, it was okay. How was your dinner out with that family? Not bad. What do you mean not bad? They took you out to dinner to your favorite restaurant, it was your birthday. Why can't you say, I had a very nice time? There are some people that they can't even give you words they can't give you. They don't know how to forgive. And the problem is that those people, hands down, always are running after compliments everywhere else. Because the people who don't know how to give compliments, it would be fine if they also didn't expect compliments from everybody else. But the same people who never can say a good word about somebody, they cannot tolerate the fact that people are not gooing over them and oozing love over them and complimenting them. If you can't give someone else the time of day, don't expect it from somebody else. And if you are expecting things from another person, so give the same things back. Make sure that things are mutually, there's a word for it?
Reciprocity.
Reciprocal relationship. Give and expect the same things that you give. The word ahava in Hebrew, in Hebrew there are some words, all words have roots. I don't know if you know this. In Hebrew, no word is just its own word. Like in English, word. What is the root of the word word? I don't know, I'm sure in Latin there's a root of this word, but I don't know it because I only speak English. In Hebrew, every word has a shorish, a root. For example, Shabbat is the day of rest. So when people go on a strike in Israel, they take a shvita. The root is shavat, also in that word. And when a person is taking a break from lishbot, they're resting from what it is they need to be doing. Every word has the root that is similar to something else. Interestingly enough, the word tshuva, return to Hashem, also has the same root as the word Shabbat, which leads one to believe that Shabbat is also a personal day of return back to Hashem or to yourself. Rav Shamshon Raphael Hirsch was once asked the question, what is the root of the word chinuch, education? When you want to educate someone, what is the root? So chen, most Hebrew words have 3 letters, but Rav Hirsch says some words only have 2. Some only have 2. The word for grace, inner beauty, in Hebrew is chen. Chen. The word for education is chinuch. It does not mean to educate somebody. It means to help them discover their own potential. Chanoch lanav al pi darko. King Solomon says, educate a child according to their unique way. Every kid is different. Everyone has a different path. Everyone does something else. And your job as a teacher is not to turn them all into the same packaged robot. Your job is to help everyone discover, so what am I good at? In our Western curriculum that we all went to school with, you must study all kinds of fields. You study math and science and history and literature and social studies and whatever it is, all the language, art, music, all the things you have to study. And we always find there are some people who are stronger in one area and they're very weak in another area. And sometimes they're strong in the right area. They're good at math, they're good at science, they're good at the things that you need to be good at. But they're very weak when it comes to creativity, when it comes to literature, when it comes to thinking out of the box, when it comes to music, when it comes to art, when it comes to writing, they're very weak in this department. Then there are people who are very good at thinking, writing, reading, singing, history, whatever it is, but the technical things are not really their forte. And these children spend 10, 12, I don't know how many years you spend in school? 12? at least 12 years of your life, if you don't go to college, and more when you go to college, thinking that they're only half adequate at something. That they're not really such a smart student because they're not good at everything. See, in the Jewish educational system back in the day, they would say, okay, so this is what you're good at, go be a mathematician. Run with it. You can be a well-rounded person. You can dabble in other things, but we will not judge a mathematician based on their ability to paint paintings of Picasso. It's just not. There's no reason to make this person feel that they're not good at something. There's no reason to tell a person who's going to be a prolific author that if they don't understand algebra, that they're good for nothing. At this point in their life, this is what they need to bring to the world. They're not bringing math into the world, they're bringing writing, they're bringing creativity to the world. Sometimes people, they lose their natural talents because they're forced to adopt top talents. They learn new things that it's not in line with their own personality. In the old Jewish world, there were not even schools. What does it say in Shema Yisrael? You should teach your children. Where do you teach your children? How do your children learn? When you're sitting in your home, when you're walking with them along the road, when they're laying down to bed at night, when they wake up in the morning. Your job is to have a 24/7 educational experience with your family, to learn with your parents. Because your parents are the only people in the world who care about you enough, hopefully, to try to make you the best you can be. The teacher has to pass a certain amount of numbers in her class. He has to make sure that everyone gets a certain kind of grade. Rarely do you find that special teacher that shines out and is the lighthouse to all other teachers. In a world where parents had to work, where parents were not always so educated, where parents were not good educators, we developed a system where people would go study from other people who took that job on themselves. But then teachers must look at themselves as emissaries of the parents. I'm just doing the job that the parents can't do. That's my job. The root, which word was I going to share with you? Chinuch. The root of the word ahava, love. Rav Eliyahu Dessler tells us in the Michtav Eliyahu. Rav Eliyahu Dessler was a great Ashkenazi Musa rabbi. Moved to Bnei Brak, and my parents studied by him. He only spoke in Yiddish, but he had someone translate for him the classes. Rav Dessler, you've probably seen books in English called Strive for Truth.
Yes.
This is Rav Dessler's, right? It's translated into English. Rav Dessler writes that the word ahava, love, has the root of hey vet, have, to give. To give. There are people who are in a relationship with somebody. When it comes time to pay for dinner, you pay. Let's split it. I don't want to carry your burden. Let's keep separate bank accounts. Let's keep separate. Let's keep everything. Let's be roommates. The root of love is to give to somebody. To give. Not expecting something back, but knowing that if you will give, you will get back. There's a difference between giving and never getting something back, and giving not wanting to get something back. You understand? One person is giving in order to get. One person is giving and never getting. That's not a healthy relationship. So is the one who gives to get something back. It's not like the person who invites you for a Shabbat meal because they then want to ask you for help getting a job somewhere. And it's nice. It's nice of them, but they're kind of using you. That's not a fair relationship. Then there's the relationship of a person who says, I'm going to give you everything that I have. I'm not asking anything back from you. I'm giving you as if you'll never give me back. And the other person says, I'm going to give you everything that I have. And that is the kind of relationship where two people are in ahava. They're in love. What does love mean? They're giving to each other everything that they have. They're sharing everything in their life. Not just the good things. Also their worries. Also a wife, a husband should be able to come home and say, I'm struggling with something. I have a problem that I'm dealing with. And I need your help. Because who else am I going to go to? Who else can you go to? I recently spoke to a couple that told me that the husbands, forgive me, I'm not very modern when it comes to this department. The husband's best friend is coming to town. So he's going to go out with his best friend for dinner. Your best friend, you don't have to accept what I'm telling you. Your best friend should be your spouse. You have a very good friend who's outside of your relationship, fine, that's fair. You have a friend, you went to high school together, you grew up together, great. Your best friend, the one you can trust with everything, is the one who shares your life with you. That is your best friend. That is the only person that has your back. And when we talk about what is a best friend, when two people have to end a relationship, and you should know this is not just for people who are married and got divorced. I wish I could speak to high school students about this when they date their boyfriends and their girlfriends, or college students when they're in all kinds of relationships over there. I'm not talking about kids who are following a life of Torah mitzvot. You have two people who are together, and they share all kinds of things about each other, with each other. Personal things, very personal things, struggles they had. In today's world, there's sharing a lot of graphic things together, a lot of pictures. I'm talking about a specific problem. And then these two people separate. Okay, it's the way of the world. It seems to be what happens a lot. I'm not a big fan of it. I'm just saying this is what happens. And these two people now, instead of just walking away and saying, this person trusted me with a lot in their life, and I'm walking away with my lips sealed and moving on to something else, they decide to use everything they know about that person against them.
Correct.
And there's no greater betrayal than that. You're betraying someone's trust. They were once your friends, and now you're not friends? Okay, that happens. That happens all the time, everywhere. Two people who were once friends and are no longer friends. But you as a human being must have the integrity that the things that were given to you in love, be'ahava, that were given to you because I trusted you. Even now when you're not friends anymore, they don't belong in someone else's mind. They don't belong in someone else's computer. They don't belong in someone else's heart. Nobody else should know that. Because you must be a person of integrity. And what happens? So people do this 10, 12, 20, 50 times before they get married. And then comes time to get married and they've already learned the lesson. Don't trust this person with anything. Because the last 20 people I trusted, they shared the information with somebody else. For what? This is the one person that you should be able to trust. This is the one person you should be able to trust.
1 minute.
Okay, 1 minute. And this...
She's changing me.
And this is why sometimes divorce can be so ugly. There are hard things to go through. Separating finances, separating lives, separating bank accounts, separating children, separating all kinds of things that must be separated. Those are things that they must be done. There's no other choice here. But there were certain things that were told to you as a spouse. And you have no right to bring those things out somewhere else. These are your... Maybe with the therapist, not sure. The rabbi you speak with, maybe the psychologist, fine. People who have a confidentiality agreement with you. But to go to all your friends, to go to all your spouse's friends, to go to all your... What kind of animal are you? What about the trust that was put in you? Yes?
How about all the technology, Snapchat,
Very good.
Facebook?
This is... Cyberbullying today has become a huge deal.
Oh,
There'll be a girl who's going to send a picture to some guy who she's in 8th grade. It's an incredible world we live in today. It's not even, like people aren't even, they're not even dating each other. There's all kinds of things that are going on. And they'll save this picture and then they mass send it out, all of it, they upload it to Facebook,
correct.
They're putting it on, and people's lives are destroyed from such things.
Correct.
And people from a young age, that's why I wish I could tell this to kids in high school. You are trusted with someone else's life. And maybe you shouldn't. Maybe what we should tell our kids, don't trust anybody. That could probably be the better thing to do in this situation. But you were trusted with something, someone else showed you a picture of themselves in a compromising situation. Forgive me that I'm accountable. This is a reality today that happens more often than you would like to believe that happens.
Agreed.
In all denominations of the world, and in all religions, and in all backgrounds, and in all places. And if you think it's not, then you are living in a la la land. And then
We do. We live in La La Land.
Okay, wonderful. And thank you for bringing this up. This is a real problem. You were trusted. Your integrity is that something you were trusted with, and I don't know why someone trusted you with it, but you were trusted with it, is to keep it to yourself. How could you? How could you press a forward button? How could you save something onto your computer? How could you do such a thing? To another person, yeah.
So you were saying, I wish I can tell this to high school students. So you go to school, you learn history, you learn mathematics, you learn geography, but you never learn human relationship, how to get along with one another. And what we are here learning at our age, or we visiting it after years of being married and so on, what about the kids? Why isn't it offered in the school?
So I'm gonna have a hard time answering this question, and the reason is because I was taught this in high school, and I was taught this in yeshiva. Not necessarily about Snapchat. We didn't know about those kind of things in yeshiva, but
Didn't exist then.
when I was, we had other things. was in yeshiva, I'll tell you, and I'll tell you, this is the truth. The truth is that yeshiva is not a system that works for everybody. It's not. And it's not a system that works for everybody. It's not. And unfortunately, yeshiva only fits certain kinds of people with certain kinds of lifestyles. There's not like a general yeshiva that's not Jewish. But a concept of yeshiva. The concept of yeshiva is the following. You will not learn anything in a 45-minute period. This is the bottom line of a Jewish yeshiva institution. You will not study Torah in 45 minutes. You will not know math in 45 minutes. You will not know history in 45 minutes. This must be a full day, a full week, a full month, a full year immersion program where you study from 7 o'clock in the morning and you study till 9 o'clock at night and you get a 2-hour lunch break. Because if you're studying that many hours, you deserve a 2-hour lunch break and a 1-hour dinner break, and a nap in the middle of the day is okay because you're going to be up all night. But we lived with our rabbis and their wives and their children, and we saw the way they raised their families, and we did every Friday night dinner at our rabbis' houses, and we went over to... And I remember kids they'd have a girlfriend in yeshiva, and they weren't supposed to have a girlfriend in yeshiva, and they would break up with their girlfriend over... Then it was texting. They would text each other, and they knew that they could go to their rabbi's house and just 12 o'clock at night knock on the door and I have a problem, I need to talk to you about a problem. And it's not the same thing in the world where you go to school from 8 o'clock in the morning till 3 o'clock in the afternoon and your education is limited to the curriculum that you have to study. And I learned from my rabbis how they lived with their wives, and I learned how they raised their children, and I saw them drive their kids to school, and we saw a lot more than just what a kid is exposed to at school. And you're right, in the normal school setting, these things aren't taught. But I don't know that you can take things like this and put them into a 12-credit curriculum, and I don't know that you can do such a thing.
It opens your mind. It gives you an idea. Being young, you don't know, and you have no instructions. You know how to go about relationship. All you have is the media and the films and the expectations.
So imagine, I didn't go to normal school. If you were in a normal school, who is the role model in the school that everyone's trying to be like?
The popular kid.
Cheerleaders.
Yeah.
What about on the staff?
Sports.
Who's on the staff that everyone wants to be like?
Yeah, the popular teacher probably.
The principal.
The
I
principal.
don't know, everyone knows
No.
that principal.
I want to tell you what I think. I think that the modern school system it's not run on a role model system. It's run on an educational system, which is the teachers are educators. She's really good at math. Nothing else. Don't study anything else from her. This teacher is incredible with English literature. They know Shakespeare, but don't study anything else from them. Where we came from, the whole point was you can't be a teacher if you're not a good person. And that's why we're always shaken up when we find out the teacher was not a good person. This teacher was, you just have to open up the news to see what teachers are doing in all denominations and all backgrounds and all ethnicities. I'm not singling anybody out. But where I was taught, it was that this person is a role model that I want to be like. And when there's one role model in the school, or 10 role models in the school that you want to be like, you trust that person to come to you and now talk to you about relationships, to talk to you about how to get along with your parents. That's something that every kid needs to learn in high school, and no high school teaches how to get along with your parents when you're a teenager. Nobody teaches parents how to get along with their teenagers when they have them. And then you find families that are fighting for 5, 6, 7 years in the middle of a kid's life, and they're you don't know me, you don't care about me, and they run away to their friends or their friends' parents, and you don't even know who their friends' parents are, and the crazy people they're running around with. And you're right, these things are not taught, but I don't know that anymore you have inside of a school system the kind of person who is not just qualified, but respected enough or looked up to enough that can teach such things.
Well, maybe they should, study something like that to be that person.
And in yeshivas, and I'll end off on this note, in yeshivot, they found out very quickly that some rabbis were just good educators, like a normal school system. They're just good at teaching Talmud. They're just good at reading Bible. They're not good enough to emulate. And so every yeshiva developed a system called a mashgiach, not the one who checks the kosher lettuce. A mashgiach ruchani, which is a spiritual supervisor. This person, they're not the principal. They're not responsible for getting you in trouble. Their closest thing to this would be the school counselor, but this educator is second to the principal, and they can trump any decision the school makes. Meaning, if they want to throw this out, but the mashgiach knows this kid is struggling with something, it's the mashgiach's job to say, it's on my shoulders. This kid's not going anywhere. I'm keeping them in the school. And this is a certain personality that they're the same ones that ask you where you were when you didn't show up at 7:30, and they're the ones who bust you when you're going off campus, but they're also the ones who might do your wedding, or the ones who will walk you down the aisle, or the ones who will be there when your kid has a brit. And that kind of role model would be able to be instituted into a normal school system. One person who their job is to be that spiritual, emotional, psychological, call it whatever you want, leader of an institution. And I definitely think the world needs to go back to such a model. So these things can be studied when people are young enough to absorb them and to implement them without having to learn from their mistakes the other way around. And we should have a beautiful day. B'ezrat Hashem.